I was 45 when I realized silence had a sound. It wasn't the kind of silence you hear late at night when the world sleeps. No, it was heavier, like the silence between two people who used to finish each other's sentences and now barely look up from their plates. That kind of silence doesn't come overnight. It creeps in like dust on a bookshelf you forgot to care about. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one morning. The light from the window hit her face just right, my wife, and I saw her as if for the first time in years. Not in the way a man sees a woman and feels a rush of love or desire, but the way you look at an old photograph and realize it's faded. She looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from carrying something I hadn't noticed. Disappointment. And I wondered if she saw it in me too. Probably. We had stopped talking about things that mattered. Conversations became logistical: who's picking up the kids, who's buying milk. No more, how are you really? Just checklists. I used to think that love died in grand explosions, betrayal, lies, scandal. But at 45, I learned it more often dies quietly, in the absence of effort, in evenings spent watching TV instead of reaching for each other's hands. The saddest part? We both still cared, just not enough to fight the drift. That was the first time I understood that comfort can be dangerous. You settle into patterns. You stop checking in with yourself, your heart, your dreams, because everything seems fine. And fine is a slow death. It's the beige of emotions. Back then, I still thought success was something you could prove on paper. A good job, a decent house, two well-fed kids. But every day I came home to that house and felt a weight I couldn't name. And I didn't talk about it. Men don't talk. Not back then. We were taught to endure. I can't tell you how many nights I lay awake next to her, staring at the ceiling, wondering when I had become a stranger to my own life. She was 5 inches away, but it felt like miles. And I blamed myself quietly, the way men do. We don't sob or scream. We ache in silence. And then we go mow the lawn. I wasn't unhappy, not entirely. That's what made it so confusing. There were still small joys. My son's laugh when I tickled him. The way my daughter held my pinky finger like it was her lifeline. But joy became something I visited, not something I lived in. I had energy, sure, but not for the things that used to light me up. I stopped playing the guitar. I stopped calling old friends. I stopped dreaming new dreams. Not because I was depressed. I just didn't see the point anymore. Somewhere along the way, I confused responsibility with surrender. And let me tell you, that's a dangerous mix. You wear it like a badge, this martyrdom of middle age. I'm doing what I have to. But who told you that's all you're allowed to do? When did obligation become the ceiling for your joy? Looking back now, from the vantage point of 80, I wish I had asked for help. Or even just admitted, out loud, that I was lost. But pride is a stubborn thing. It makes you wear a smile while your soul is unraveling inside. There was a moment, I remember it vividly, when I stood in the garage, staring at the shelves. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I just stood there, maybe hoping the quiet would answer something. The air smelled like old paint and motor oil, and I thought, is this it? Is this what the rest of my life feels like? I didn't need a crisis to shake me, just the slow erosion of wonder. That's the cruelest part about turning 45. You're too young to give up, but old enough to believe that nothing new is coming. And that belief, that's what steals your spirit. I see it now. I see how I started shrinking myself, turning down invitations, saying no to weekends with friends because I had too much to do. What I really had was a growing fear that I no longer belonged in the spaces that once welcomed me. And I missed laughter, the kind that makes you throw your head back without apology. I hadn't laughed like that in months, maybe years. I think men at that age start to mourn things before they lose them. The edge of their ambition, their looks, their sense of adventure. You start saying things like, those days are behind me, as if you're already writing your own ending. But let me tell you something I've only come to understand decades later. Nothing's behind you unless you leave it there. If you're still with me, thank you. And I wonder, have you ever felt that quiet ache too? That moment of looking around your life and wondering when you stopped being in it? If you're still here, leave me a comment and let me know. Just a simple "I'm here" will do. Sometimes that's all we need to feel a little less alone. There was a Saturday morning, late spring I think, when I sat in the car for nearly an hour outside a coffee shop, engine off, just sitting. I had told my wife I needed to get out, clear my head, whatever that meant. She didn't ask questions. Maybe she was relieved I left the house. The truth is, I wasn't even sure why I drove there. I didn't want coffee. I didn't want company. I just couldn't bear the stillness of the house that morning, the way the walls seemed to echo things we no longer said. So I sat there, watching people walk in and out, some in a rush, some holding hands. A young couple laughed as they spilled foam from a paper cup. They looked like they had nowhere else to be but together. And that's when it hit me. I had spent the last several years rushing towards some version of stability. Mortgage paid, kids healthy, bills on time, and somewhere along the way I had stopped being present. I had become a man who measured life in transactions. Get this done. Fix that leak. Return that call. But I hadn't felt anything in weeks. It's strange how easily we stop noticing our own lives. You wake up, check the calendar, get dressed, feed the dog, scroll through the news, and it all feels like living. But it's not. It's maintenance. That day in the car, I realized something I hadn't dared say out loud. I was lonely. Not alone, there's a difference. I had people around me, but I didn't feel known. Not really. And I hadn't made space to know myself either. I used to have this friend, Marcus. We were close in our 20s, back when life was still wide open and all the roads were unmarked. He was the kind of man who called just to ask how your soul was doing. Not your job, not your finances, your soul. You don't meet many people like that anymore. I hadn't spoken to Marcus in almost 7 years. I thought about calling him that day. I picked up the phone, then put it down again. Too much time had passed. Or maybe I was ashamed of what I'd become. He once told me, "Don't let life make you smaller just because it's getting harder." I remember brushing that off. Now it lived in my chest like a stone. I started to notice how often I kept things inside. Feelings I didn't have names for, worries I never voiced, longings I buried under work or chores. I'd been told all my life that strength meant not needing anyone. But I was starting to understand that true strength might mean the opposite. It takes courage to say, "I'm not okay." Even more to say, "I miss being me." The hard part is, the longer you wear a mask, the more it starts to feel like your real face. I wish I had known then that vulnerability wasn't weakness. That telling your wife you feel empty doesn't make you less of a man. That calling your friend just to say, "I'm tired," doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. But pride, it whispers all the wrong things at the wrong time. So instead, I got out of the car that day, went inside, ordered a coffee I didn't need, and pretended I belonged there. Like I wasn't breaking inside. You want to know the bitter truth? People don't always notice when you're disappearing, especially when you're still showing up. I was always there, at the table, in the bed, on the soccer field cheering for my son. But slowly, I was vanishing. Not from the world, just from myself. And no one told me that could happen. No one warned me that you could love your family deeply and still feel like you're drowning in plain sight. I wish I had spoken up. I wish I had said something simple like, "I need to feel alive again." Maybe it wouldn't have changed everything, but maybe it would have reminded me I still mattered. There's a photo from that year. I'm holding a birthday cake, smiling at the camera. I've looked at that picture 100 times. Not because I looked happy, but because I looked convincing. We get so good at pretending, so good that even we start to believe it. Until one day, the pretending becomes heavier than the truth. So if you're still here, reading this far, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt like you were standing in your own life but watching it from the outside? Like you're showing up, doing the motions, but the light's gone dim behind your eyes? So, leave me a comment. Just a small sign that you're here, still searching, still feeling. Sometimes, we all need that quiet reminder. You're not invisible. You're not alone in this. Not really. I remember walking past the mirror one morning, half awake, shirt wrinkled, stubble too long. I paused, just for a second, caught a glimpse of myself. Not in a vain way. It wasn't about the gray hairs sneaking in or the softening around the jawline. It was something deeper, something in the eyes. There was a man there I didn't quite recognize. I stood still and asked myself a question I hadn't dared ask in years. When did I stop seeing myself? You see, at 45, I was many things to many people: a father, a husband, a provider, a colleague. I wore those roles like armor, and I wore them well. But beneath the armor, I wasn't sure who was left. No one tells you that being everything to everyone comes with a cost. You start speaking in service of others, thinking in schedules, measuring your worth in usefulness. And one day you look in the mirror and realize you haven't asked yourself what you want in a very long time. Not what's practical, not what's expected, but what you, the man under all those layers, actually long for. I used to love drawing, just pencil on paper. Quiet mornings, nothing fancy. I hadn't picked up a sketch pad in over a decade. No time, I told myself. Maybe when the kids are older. But really, I just forgot that part of me existed. And isn't that how it happens? We don't lose ourselves in one loud moment. We drift, slowly, almost politely, into the margins of our own lives. I started working longer hours around that time. Not because the job demanded it, but because the silence at home did. Work gave me structure, deadlines, performance reviews. At least there, I knew how I was doing. At home, there was no scoreboard for presence, no monthly feedback for emotional availability. So I poured myself into spreadsheets and conference calls, told myself I was doing it for the family. And maybe part of me was, but another part, the quieter part, was just hiding. Here's what they don't tell you about hiding in productivity. It works until it doesn't. Eventually, your body starts to protest. The fatigue becomes heavier, the tension deeper. I began waking up with this knot behind my eyes, like a warning light flickering on the dashboard. But I kept going. Men are taught to endure, push through, be strong. But strength without softness hardens you. I started becoming short with my kids. Not cruel, just absent. They'd ask me questions while I typed, tug at my sleeve. I'd nod without listening, smile without hearing. And I told myself they'd understand one day. But now, with years between us, I can tell you this: children don't remember what you provided as much as they remember how you made them feel. And I wasn't really there. I was present in body, absent in soul. My daughter once drew a picture in school, my family, and everyone was smiling. But I was drawn holding a laptop. Not a book, not a toy. A laptop felt like a punch to the chest. And still, I didn't change. Not right away. Because admitting you're off course means confronting how far you've drifted. And that's terrifying. So I did what most men do. I told myself I was doing my best. I rationalized. I distracted. I chased small highs. A new watch, a better car, praise at work. Hoping something outside could fix what was hollow inside. But nothing stuck. Because here's the truth I only saw clearly at 80. No external win can substitute for inner peace. And that peace only comes when you return to yourself. When you take off the mask, the armor, the titles, and ask, what would make me proud to be me again? It's not always a big answer. Sometimes it's as small as picking up the sketchpad again, or calling your son without a reason, or sitting with your wife in silence. Not to fill the air, but just to be near her, truly near her, for the first time in weeks. Sometimes the road back to yourself begins with a pause, a breath, a moment of honesty you've been running from. And sometimes it begins with pain, because pain has a way of waking you up, reminding you that you're still alive, still capable of choosing again, of returning to what matters. At 45, I thought I was running towards success, but I was really running away from myself. It took me far too long to turn around. One evening, I came home later than usual. Not from work, I'd stopped staying late by then, but from nowhere in particular. I think I just took the long road home because the thought of walking through that front door felt heavier than traffic. The house was quiet when I entered. My wife was sitting on the couch, reading. She looked up, smiled politely, then went back to her book. I stood there a moment, waiting for something. A word, a joke, a question. But silence was all that came. And that silence, it wasn't angry. It wasn't cold. It was worse than that. It was indifferent. That was the night I learned that love doesn't always die in shouting matches or slammed doors. Sometimes, it dies in the quiet space between two people who no longer reach for each other. We were both tired. Not of each other, maybe, but of trying to fix what neither of us could name. I sat beside her, close but not touching. The air felt thick, like it remembered arguments we'd never spoken out loud. She asked if I'd eaten. I nodded. She didn't press. And that was it. That was our whole exchange for the evening. Two people who once held dreams under moonlight, now reduced to logistics and soft nods. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the kitchen with the lights off. Just me and the hum of the refrigerator. I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I just sat. For hours. Letting the stillness say everything I was too proud or too scared to voice. I thought about how often we pretend things are fine because it's easier than starting over. Or worse, admitting that we don't know what starting over would even look like. I thought about how I used to make her laugh. The real kind. The head thrown back, tears in her eyes kind. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her laugh like that. I couldn't remember the last time I had laughed like that. The strange how grief can sneak into a marriage that hasn't even ended. I wasn't grieving a person. I was grieving what we used to be, and what we were slowly, painfully, no longer. We hadn't cheated. We hadn't fought. We hadn't broken anything outright. But the distance between us had grown so quietly, so steadily, that by the time we noticed, we couldn't see across it anymore. I blamed myself, not in a self-pitying way, but in that quiet, adult way men do when they know they could have done more, but didn't. Not because they were cruel, but because they were tired or distracted, or too afraid to ask for more from life and from themselves. And maybe she blamed herself too. I'll never know. We didn't talk about it. That's the thing about silence, it grows. And once it settles between two people, it takes more than love to uproot it. It takes courage, vulnerability, a willingness to risk discomfort for the sake of connection. And we didn't risk it. We played it safe. We coexisted. People outside thought we were doing great. Smiles at family dinners, holding hands at weddings. But behind closed doors, we were roommates. Kind ones, respectful ones, but not lovers. Not anymore. And that's the kind of heartbreak no one prepares you for, the kind where there's no villain, just time, distance, and the slow erosion of attention. I look back now and wonder how many marriages end not with a bang, but with a whisper, with missed chances, unspoken needs, busy schedules, and the quiet, aching belief that this is just how it is. But it doesn't have to be. You don't have to live like that. You don't have to settle for not bad when what you once had was breathtaking. You don't have to give up on reaching for each other. I wish I had known then what I know now, that the cost of avoidance is intimacy, that not speaking the hard truth robs you of the chance to heal, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say, I'm hurting, and I miss us. And maybe, just maybe, she was waiting for me to say that too. But I didn't, and neither did she. So we drifted gently, respectfully, apart. That kind of sadness doesn't leave scars. It leaves quiet rooms, and old photos you can't quite bring yourself to delete. I once read that the heart doesn't break all at once. Cracks in quiet places, in the goodnight kisses that grow shorter, in the dinners eaten across the table instead of together, in the dreams left behind because they no longer seemed practical. At 45, I didn't know how to name those cracks. I just knew something was slipping through them. But here's the thing about time, it teaches you whether you ask for the lesson or not. Some lessons arrive like thunder, others like mist on the window. You only see them when you're still enough to notice. Years later, long after the kids had grown and the house felt too big for just two people pretending to be fine, I did something unexpected. I left work early. I came home without groceries, without emails buzzing in my pocket, without a plan. I found her, my wife, folding laundry just like she always did. I stood there for a while watching, and then I said it. Not with drama, not with apology, just a quiet truth. long overdue. I miss us. She looked up. I think she had been waiting. We didn't fix everything that day. This isn't a movie. But we sat down, for the first time in a long time, and talked. Not about the kids, not about errands, about us, about what we'd forgotten, about what we still wanted. It was awkward at first. Then, it wasn't. That small conversation, as unremarkable as it may seem, became the first stone in a new path. A path that led us back not to who we were, but to who we could still become. That's something I want you to hear, if nothing else stays with you. You are not too far gone, not too old, not too tired, not too late. The door back to yourself is always open. The only question is whether you're ready to walk through. And maybe you don't have a marriage to save. Maybe what you need is to forgive yourself for disappearing, for being numb, for settling. Maybe what you need is to pick up that old dream, dust it off and say, I remember you. Maybe what you need is rest, or movement, or a laugh that doesn't feel earned, just free. At 80, I've stopped believing in too late. The very fact that you're still breathing means something inside you still wants more. More connection, more truth, more days where you feel awake in your own skin. And no, not every wound can be undone. Not every silence can be turned back into song. But you can choose to show up differently today, not tomorrow. You can call that friend. Say, I love you without needing it said back. Put your phone down and listen. Really listen. When someone speaks, you can let go of the armor. You can soften without breaking. You can remember who you were before life asked you to forget. If you're still watching this, I want you to know, I see you. In all your trying, in all your hiding, in all your beautiful, imperfect becoming. You don't need to have it figured out. You just need to be willing to begin again, even quietly, even now. And if you'd like to return, you know where to find me. This space doesn't go anywhere. It waits just like I waited for years to say the things I wish I'd said when I still had time. And you still have time. Go on, take it.